guys, welcome back to the community table where I'm taking your pantry staples on a trip around the world. This week I'm doing ground beef. It is not a pantry staple per se, but it's definitely a meat staple. It's available, it's affordable, it's quick to cook, but sometimes it can be a little boring, right? So I'm going to show you one of my favorite things to do with ground beef, and that is to make a dish called Kheema. One of my favorite dishes. I was excited about eating it when I was a kid. I'm excited about cooking it as a grown-up. So I'm going to start with 2 pounds of ground beef. The first thing I'm going to do is brown the meat. And all I'm doing is putting the meat in a skillet, no fat, nothing. That ground beef is 80% lean, 20% fat. So there's some beautiful grass-fed beef fat in there. And instead of using up more fat from my pantry and also making the dish too greasy, I'm going to use the fat that's already in the meat to cook my aromatics, my onions and my garlic and my ginger. So I'm just going to let this cook until it's no longer pink, and then we'll do the rest of the recipe. Okay, while the meat is browning and cooking, let's talk through what else you're going to need. This is a whole yellow onion, some garlic and some ginger that I minced up, a couple of tomatoes chopped up, and then you're going to need some spices. Some paprika, turmeric, some cumin, some garam masala, and some ground coriander seed. And this I just ground, because as I always say, do not buy ground coriander. It's dead, I tell you, dead. So buy the whole, I just fell over because I'm so passionate about it. I'm actually going to take the meat out of all this fat and liquid, and I'm going to cook the aromatics in that. Now I'm going to add my onion. I'm just going to cook that until it goes golden brown. Do you see how much fat there is? If I had used fat in the beginning, then there would have been all of this fat plus the fat I used to brown the meat, and it would have been a super greasy dish. So, pretty proud of myself right here. This is a great stuffing for a lot of things. So I've used this meat mixture and then made some mashed potatoes or mashed sweet potatoes and made a shepherd's pie out of it. Or I'll let it cool and roll out some pastry and make little empanadas out of it, like Indian empanadas. It's just one of those dishes that I always have in my back pocket. It's a crowd pleaser, it's a kid pleaser, it's a wallet pleaser, and it's a great way if you're trying to play around and add more spice into your life. It's got a lot of great spices in it that are good for your body as well as your palate. Okay, so the onions are golden brown. They smell sweet, so don't waste any time. Add the garlic and the ginger now, which I just got it this fine by grating it on a microplane. Okay, so we're going to need about a tablespoon of coriander, a teaspoon or so, maybe a couple, of paprika, about a half teaspoon of turmeric. These are so difficult to work with, like they're so gargantuan. And then I'm going to do a teaspoon of garam masala. Okay, did I miss anything? Yes, I did! One of my favorites, which is ground cumin. I just ground that right before. I'm going to do about a half teaspoon. Mix that in. I'm using a non-stick skillet here. If you're not using one of those and your spices start to stick, add some hot water, and that will keep them from sticking and burning. Okay, I'm going to put the meat back in. It's like beefy, sweet from the onions, a little pungent from the garlic and the ginger, and then all those spices. I'm going to smell like Kheema at the end of this, and I'm okay with it. Okay, time to add the tomatoes. So I've got like 3 tomatoes in here. You can also use canned diced tomatoes. Woo. And this is going to add a little bit of moisture and tang and sweetness. When I'm making this for people in my family who cannot handle nightshades, I leave it out altogether, and instead I'll add some coconut aminos, Worcestershire sauce if they can handle that, and a little extra vinegar at the end, a pinch of sugar to kind of imitate the flavor that the tomatoes bring to this dish. So now all I have to do is add a little bit of water. Cover this and let it cook for about 10 minutes. Here's my fancy lid. Time to check. Ooh, coming together well. It's reducing nicely. Meat is still tender. There's a little bit of a gravy, which is good. And now, I'm just going to add some frozen peas. And then just cook it for another 5 minutes. That's it. Lid on. Boop. This is a trick I learned when I was working in restaurants and you couldn't find a lid that was the right size. You just take another pan and you put it right on top. Or you take a big old baking sheet, you put it right on top. So if you don't have a lid, don't worry about it. Oh my gosh, I lost track of thought because look how pretty that looks. Look at the bright green of the peas and the red of the tomatoes. You can also cook potatoes in this. Basically, you would add the potatoes right after you've done the spices and let them cook a little bit, then add the meat and the tomatoes and everything. It'll cook together. But that is all done. I'm going to taste it. Turn this off. Actually, before I taste it, the one last ingredient that is very important is some vinegar. So I'm using apple cider vinegar. I love how malt vinegar tastes in this, but really anything you have works. Red wine is great. So that's just going to brighten everything up and open up the flavors there. Put some space right between the spices and the onions and the meat. So let's take a little taste. That's hot. Wow. I wouldn't add anything to it, which is so rare. I'm just going to finish it with some cilantro right over the top. For color and for flavor, again, it has that lemony, grassy sort of flavor that really opens up all those flavors and balances everything out. The one thing I'll say about this dish, it's great if you let it sit for a few hours. So this is a great dish to make first thing in the morning, let it cool, put it in the fridge, and then at dinner time, warm it back up and it'll taste like a million times even more complex. So just like any kind of chili or whatever. Anyway, so there it is. That is keema, one of my favorite recipes in the entire universe. Go ahead and make it. Let me know how it turns out. If you make it, take a photo and tag me in it. I love seeing how my recipes turn out in your kitchens, at your community table, and I will see you next week. Bye!